Hello, my name is Melanie Tana. Welcome back to my channel. I make videos about stories in all their different forms and what I can learn from them. And sometimes I talk about my specific favorites, characters I love, or just make a fun, silly video. And this week I wanted to talk about a character. I've been wanting to make this video for a while, and because of some things I've seen about said character, just casually on Reddit and whatnot, I'd like to talk about it. So the character I wanted to talk about today is Adolin Kholin from the Stormlight Archive. Brandon Sanderson writes a lot of really excellent characters, and he writes a lot of smart characters. So I think right off the bat, some critiques people have of Adolin are that he's not as smart, as intelligent, or scholarly, even sometimes not as witty as the other characters in the series. And people also find that he is vain and that his love for fashion can be a bit annoying, that he and Shallan maybe don't work together like people think. People often ship Kaladin and Shallan more, and so I just have a lot of thoughts on that, a lot of responses to that, and things I've seen about Adolin and about how important of a character he is, and that he is still complex. He's very good, I believe, very kind and a great friend, but he's also more than that, and I'll get into that. There will be spoilers about some events throughout the series, obviously where Adolin is and kind of how things go with him, but not for the whole series of the Stormlight Archive. Still, it may not make much sense without having read them, so I do recommend reading the Stormlight Archive, even though, yes, they are very long, big books, but still, high recommendation. I think when you start The Way of Kings, you see Adolin as like this, like he's the handsome guy who gets the girls but doesn't quite know how to treat the girls right, and you think that that's going to be it for him. And over the progression of the stories, even though he's never really a main character, he really does improve, and he tries to improve, and his arc is interesting, and I still don't know for sure where it's going, but I like it a lot. I just want to start off by talking about some scenes that really highlight why I think Adolin is important, and just some good things about him, because I think when you put it all together, you really recognize that he is key to the story, and it's not always because he saves the day, even though sometimes he definitely does. So starting off from book one, you find out that he really does like the ladies, but he does have bad luck with them. And to kind of showcase that he isn't necessarily a player, or that he isn't out there just to objectify women, they show you that interaction with Kaladin when there's the prostitute, and he watches Adolin treat her kindly and with respect in a world where Kaladin believes no light eyes like Adolin are good, respectable men. Basically, they have no honor, but I think Adolin proves time and again that he does have honor. The more you learn about him, you learn that he is interested in the fashion trends and where those trends are going. He cares about how he looks. He is a little vain, but in a way that it's almost more of a hobby and an interest than it is just him being self-centered, because he's never so self-centered that he can't care about other people, and at least I don't feel like he is. He gets a lot from his mom, you learn, who's passed on, that really contradicts with Dalinar's coldness and his harshness from Adolin's childhood. He still picked up a lot from his mom, and in doing so, he's able to take care of Renarin, his brother, who's different than a lot of other people, and he still loves him and supports him and never really makes fun of him or talks down to him or anything like that. He might lightly tease him, but it's all done out of love, and Renarin knows that, but he's never ultimately disrespectful. And I think, though, you see that growth from book one to book two when he meets Shallan and he starts to court her. He is open and honest with her, even when it could embarrass him. He owns up the fact that when he has to go to the bathroom in his shard plate, he goes to the bathroom in his shard plate, and it's hilarious. But it makes a point that he's open about himself, that he doesn't carry a lot of shame, and that makes me think he's not egotistical. If he was truly a vain person overall, like to a fault, then he probably wouldn't have shared that fact. He wouldn't want the girl he likes to know that about him, but she's persistent, and he is willing to play along. He's a good sport, and it just shows how humble he is, and also accepting and confident about himself. That's another thing about him, his love for the duel, his love for the art itself not hurting people. He doesn't want to hurt people, and he expresses that clearly. There's really one time where he truly can't hold back and he hurts someone, Sadius, and it makes sense. And that burst of anger and rage is not common. And when it is, it shows a complexity to his character. I think he is objectively good. He is a good friend, a kind person. But he still has that moment of weakness, and it just shows how passionate of a person he is and how much he cares about his friend and his family, and how defensive he is of his dad. From book one, Dalinar's having visions that most people think are just bogus. Him, I mean, he was drunk for so long. It makes sense that the Blackthorn is slipping now. He's getting old. But Adolin, even when he doubts his dad, even when he's a little embarrassed by him, he overcomes that, and he tries to be understanding and tries to be there for him, and it pays off because his dad is having visions, real ones, from a real source, and Adolin is able to be there for him. I really love in book 2 when Adolin is in the duel and Kaladin joins in, and when Kaladin is the cringiest boy alive and asks for his boon, ultimately goes to jail for accusing Amaram of what he accuses Amaram of. Adolin goes to jail for as long as Kaladin does, until he's released, to stand by him, because that's what he can do to show that he actually is a good friend, that he actually cares. And he knows that good old bridge boy is mistrustful of other people, and for good reason, and he doesn't take it personally. He just shows, hey, you can trust me. And I think that means a lot, in that he doesn't just say it, he shows it. And he's never asking Kaladin to thank him necessarily. He just does it because he appreciates what Kaladin did for him, and because he doesn't necessarily see the separation between him and others the same way. He's willing to bridge that and cross that with people, with being nice to the prostitute, with being supportive of Kaladin, who's supportive of him. He starts to make that connection and remember the people who have been there for him. In some ways you could say he's kind of like an edge dancer, but I think he does his own thing in his own way, and he is just a good friend. And he's not without flaws and insecurities. I mean, in not being a Knight Radiant, he is wondering what his place in the world is. In learning about what happened with his mom and his dad, he has a lot of confusion about who he is, and he knows he can't be king. He's very sure on some things. He can't be king. He's confident with his friendships and his ability in duel and in fighting. But in not being a Knight Radiant, it almost shows how much better of a man he is, that he doesn't need the superpowers to try to help people. And not only can he fight without the powers, but he can be there for his friends. That is, in a way, a power to him. It reminds me a lot, his sort of friendship vibes, as Samwise Gamgee. What a good little hobbit who really doesn't have anything supernatural about him, but just by being so courageous and by loving Frodo so much, he was able to conquer things that, if you think about, are insurmountable, but he knows it's what must be done. And I think that's similar with Adolin. Especially when you're a friend of people with mental health issues, Adolin seems to be able to, he might not get it personally, but he gets where he is able to keep his head above water and not sink down with everyone else. He can kind of carry them up with him a little bit. And it's often a go-to for him when he's down. He doesn't whine or complain for too long. There's a scene in Oathbringer after events at Kholinar. He's on Nodim's ship in Shadesmar, and he knows that Kaladin is basically battle-shocked, and he has a lot of questions about himself. He's some insecurities about himself, and when that starts to get too hard, he perks up and he's like, well, everything else is overwhelming, but Kaladin needs me, and I need to be his friend, Even when he feels like he doesn't matter, he knows that other people need to know that they matter. And in a way, that's how he finds his worth, and that's how he finds his strength. We all love Kaladin, I'd say. People who don't are wrong. And I mean, I know people have their opinions about Shallan, but I think a lot of people like Shallan, and we care about them. They've been through some serious trauma. And it's not to say that Adolin hasn't, but I think he knows that he is capable to, like I said, keep his head above the waves of all the things that he's been through, and so when his friends aren't, he's there for them. Just like when he goes and helps Kaladin in Shadesmar, in Oathbringer, when they're at Urithiru in Rhythm of War, and Kaladin is alone, and he is pretty depressed. Syl knows who to find, and she says that she had to find someone who wouldn't be intimidated by Kaladin, who could just be like, no, I'm taking care of you. And that's Adolin, you know, he doesn't let your mental health bring him down. He just is a friend in the face of it with you. Even though he doesn't understand it, he's patient, and that's why he's such a good partner for Shallan, in my opinion, because he can just sit with her. Even when Shallan gets mad at him for trying to protect her so much, he respects that boundary, that it makes her safe to feel like she can protect herself. And I would never say that he really gets it, because he's not supposed to. That's not who he is. The point is that he doesn't get it, but he gets where he's needed, and what he can do is just be there, support, and pull Stinkum Bridge Boy out of his funks, and take him out to be social with people. And it's simple. And it may not be the cleverest thing. It may not be Navani and Rabaniel doing science magic in Rhythm of War. It's not Shallan solving these mysteries. It's not Kaladin kicking butt as a Windrunner. But it's him conquering these little things and helping people in ways that keep them alive, literally. Shallan and Kaladin wouldn't last without Adolin. I think when Adolin comes to help Kaladin in Rhythm of War at the beginning, and when they go to the wedding together and Adolin's friends with other bridgemen, I think Kaladin sees like what a good friend he has, that Adolin is just there for people. And if we lost Kaladin because he didn't have his friend, we wouldn't have like a beloved character. So Adolin's not pointless, and just because he isn't always the most clever doesn't mean he isn't so valuable. And I think that is evident in Rhythm of War, and this is more of a spoiler with Maya, his shard blade, who is a Deadeye Spren. So she isn't like other Deadeyes. She is interactive with Adolin. She knows who he is, and that he's talked with her and been there with her, and sort of pulled her out into this in-between, between being a full-on Deadeye and a coherent present Spren. And it's like she's probably like, it's almost like she's trapped in there and she's trying to get out, and he can help her with that. No one's ever done that before. And I remember reading Rhythm of War during the trial, and Adolin sitting there with Maya. And honestly, I was waiting for him to make some big argument, to be like, no, you're wrong, this. And I think the beautiful thing is that, first of all, he doesn't know what he's doing there. People are right. He isn't an intellectual. He's not a scholar. First of all, men in Kholin are not scholars. That's just the Yalethi. They that's not what they do. That's not how the men do it. They don't read. They don't study that way. But he is very knowledgeable about people and what they need. And Spren, to him, even his sword counts as a person. He talks to it. You see it when he goes to save Nodum. He doesn't even think about it. It's very edge dancer of him, you know. And as he goes to save Nodum, Gallant and Maya are like so there. They're ready to help. And it's because he makes connections with all kinds of people and creatures, because he has a respect for life. And that might seem simple enough, but he's aware. He takes a second to look at a person, to see who they are, and it keeps other people alive. It saves Kaladin's life on multiple occasions. Overall, it benefits Shallan's life, because she has been without people who could love and take care of her, and he does that for her. Shallan and Kaladin shippers, I'm sorry, I don't think that ship would sail. It's not a mentally healthy ship. It's not. It makes sense with their banter. But I want to say another thing about Adolin's intelligence with the banter thing. He doesn't always get the quips that Shallan puts together, but if you really think about the things she says, they are a bit silly at times. And I think the truth of Shallan is that there's a child inside her who wants to be loved and who wants to be silly. She has to be smart and on top of it all the time, and then she finds someone who just wants her to be her, and they can be silly together and just laugh together and admire the beauty of the world. So I've heard people say that Shallan and Adolin are just these silly, lovesick kids together, but that's the point. I know they're young adults, I know the world is serious, but they are competent in battle, they are competent in solving all these issues, and literally Adolin's ability to make a friend saves him during that trial, because Maya has been pulled out of her half-death into a consciousness because he was a good friend. That literally is his superpower, and it's kind of the reason I think that he shouldn't be a Radiant, because he doesn't need to be. It wouldn't really change much of his arc. It would make sense that he would be an edge dancer, but you can live by those ideals and not have magical powers. I think that's the point. It's that people are good in them, that honor itself isn't about a being, but about the hearts of men, and Adolin carries that honor so powerfully. I think if we all had a friend like Adolin, we would all be way better off. He's not, he has a point. And I think also, along with the intelligence, Adolin's one of the few characters who doesn't, and his outburst with Sadeas lends itself to that he's not completely well mentally, you know, obviously no one is completely okay, but he's a lot more functional in the day-to-day, I'd say, than the people that he loves. But the people that he loves, Yasna, Renarin, Dalinar, even Navani, Kaladin for sure, Shallan for sure, they all suffer with really difficult mental health issues and trauma responses from previous relationships and everything. And even though Adolin still has his stuff, he is more neurotypical than I would say most of the cast are. And I think in a way that bothers people. Some people are bothered with how depressed Kaladin is, and I think that's silly because I think he's so well written and his arc is really powerful. But Adolin is okay. And it's almost like people think that makes him less relatable, but I think I don't know if he's supposed to be the relatable one. I think he's supposed to be someone who can take care of someone like us. Someone like Kaladin who's depressed, or Shallan who's severely traumatized and has a lot of defense mechanisms built up, who can just sit with those people and let them let their guard down for a bit so they can just feel like themselves and take a breather. For those of us who are capable to be like Adolin, we should strive to be. He, again, I must express this, saves lives by being a good friend, brings people back from the dead, basically, and it's a real power, you know? And also, why does every character in Stormlight and Sanderson's works in general have to be a genius? Yes, there's a lot being tied together, but a lot of these geniuses wouldn't make it out alive if someone wasn't there to fight for them, and not all of them can fight for themselves. Adolin is competent at the things he's competent at. He doesn't need to be hyper-intellectual. If they were all so dang smart, I would be kind of bored. The point is that their dynamics work well, that he is a functional part of the team. I mean, think of the end of Words of Radiance during that battle. He's willing to face Seth knowing that he's not Radiant and he's going to get his butt kicked and he will probably die. And yes, he's trained with that mentality as a soldier, but it's also who he is. He will die for the things he believes in and for the people that he cares about. And not because he's obsessed with it like Kaladin, but because he loves people. It's almost making me emotional, I'm not gonna lie. So my question for you, do you like Adolin Kholin, or does he bother you? Do you think he's kind of dumb? Do you think he's too vain? But I'd love if maybe you could consider that he is valuable, that his difference mentally from everyone else is actually the reason a lot of them are doing okay, because he can be there for them when they are stuck in their brains, and he's not. Yes, I'm a soft critic. No, I don't feel harshly about most characters. There's not many characters I hate. If I do, I don't read the books. I love so many characters, and I see so much value in all of them, and I find that Adolin is such a good example of a really good friend. To the point, like I said, that I would compare him to Samwise, because he is the reason half these things go okay, because he's there for his friends. And that is a real superpower. It's its own radiant magic. It is honor and it is goodness, and I love him. Anyway, so who are your favorite good friend characters? Who inspires you to do good and to be there for the ones you love? Does Adolin drive you nuts? I do want to hear it all genuinely in the comments. If you want me to make more videos like this, talking about characters that I love and why I love them and what I feel about them, please just let me know. I am so willing to do so and so excited to make more videos for you. Thank you for checking this one out and sticking around to the end. And I can't end this video without citing my researcher ultimately. My sister in this last year has read the Stormlight Archive twice through along with Mistborn, and so she's just devouring them, and she's been able to cite specific scenes for me that I could call up about Adolin and remind me why I love him so much, and she loves him too. And I have to quote her because this is literally Adolin summed up in a quote. And she says this, speaking from Adolin's POV, "I don't know who I am in this world, but I have to be nice to my friends." And anyway, isn't that just the truth? So thank you, Jay, for reading these books again, so I don't have to while I read other books. She's been a big help, and I'll have to include her in a video. We'll have to discuss some Stormlight and such with y'all. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well, and I hope that if you don't have an Adolin Kholin in your life, maybe check out these books so that you can have a friend like him in the pages. So yeah, anyway, thank you for watching. I will see you next week with another video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, or whatever it is, wherever you are. Bye.